Lesson, we're going to look at how to solo over George Gershwin's Summertime. We're in the guitar-friendly key of A minor, and we're going to look at terms of what scales and arpeggios you can use to improvise over the changes with. Now, if you're not already familiar with the changes or would like to brush up on that side of things, then my last lesson covered how to play the chords in various different ways, and you can find that video via my description or a card above. Now, on to soloing over Summertime. So, on to scales that we can use over Summertime. So, we're in the guitar-friendly key of A minor, which yields the following chords: A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, C major 7, D minor 7. In theory, we should find E minor 7 is chord 5, but it's often substituted for E7 as it's a stronger pullback to 1. F major 7, G7, A minor 7. Take our chart, which you can get on my website, by the way, links in the description and in the pinned comment. The following chords are out of key, and these are the chords which you've got to treat carefully: E flat diminished 7th, B7 and D7. Everything else is in key, and that's important for my next thing I'd like to do, which is one of the simplest ways to solo over a song like this is just use one scale. And particularly if you don't know your arpeggios or your chord tones very well, you can still, have a go at improvising just with one scale. Now, A minor, scales I would possibly use over this. And by the way, we'd ignore that B7, the E flat diminished 7th and the D7, we're just kind of going to ignore for now. We can think about how we treat them later. One scale that would work really well over this tune would be the A harmonic minor, being in 2 octaves. A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A. Now why this scale? Why not use A minor? Maybe A minor pentatonic or A blues. I'd probably, to be honest, use a mixture of all of those things, but I'm just keeping it easy with one scale for you right now. The reason the harmonic minor is the best is because of the 7th, that G sharp. And that's a really important note. You can hear it desperately wants to go to the A. Now, it's important because, the most important chords in any song are 1 and 5. In this song, 1 is A minor and 5 is E7. Now the major third of E7 is a G sharp, which is that 7th, and it's called a leading tone. It leads back to the root note A of the key. Now that's really important because thirds define a chord, whether it's major or minor. And if we just used any of those other scales I mentioned, we wouldn't have that G sharp and we wouldn't get that nice lead back to the A. And that G sharp is ideal for when the chord is E7, to really outline the sound of the song. And in terms of getting used to using one scale, well, first off, can you play it up and down? Do you know the notes you're playing? Can you hear the sound of it in your head? Like if I just play that note, can you still hear that sound of that scale? Interesting scale because it's got 3 places where there's a semitone interval: B to C, E to F, G sharp to A. For me, they're always my favourite points in a scale because they're tense. Now, be able to play it up and down fluently at a reasonable speed, and you can just put the song on and just practice running the scale up and down to get started. I can put my track on. It doesn't sound like a solo, I know, but this is about you getting to grips with using a scale, because you're going to need to be able to do basic things like that before you can say stuff with it. The other thing I really need you to be able to do, rather than just being able to start from there or there, so the A at the top or the bottom, if I put you here, say on a C, can you find your way out of it either going up the scale or down the scale? So if I'm on a C, the next note's D above. If I'm going backwards, C, B. So being able to not just, you learn these sort of scale positions, from a root note, but actually you want to be able to access it from any point. So put yourself down on E, the next note's either F or it's a D. Obviously I could make leaps, I could go from this E, jump to a C, which is getting more advanced with a basic scale shape. So getting started with using this scale, how do you actually start to sort of develop musical ideas with it? Well, keep short, simple phrases, just aim for 3 or 4 notes maybe to begin with, leave some space. Ideas that, call and response, repetition, that build on each other. Use the melody as inspiration, sort of vary it. One thing to try to do is when it's in E7, try and find that G sharp because it will really stand out. Just using the melody, I could be like, so I'm not playing, I'm going, changing the last note, da 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 da, something along that sort of rhythm. It's not quite the melody, but it's inspired by it. Let me try some of these ideas. I'll do simple phrasing, maybe using a bit of the melody, but just sticking to that A harmonic minor, trying to find that G sharp on the E7 chord maybe. Kind of idea. Those other scales I mentioned earlier, the blues scale, the pentatonic, you might want to bring in. I brought them a tiny bit at the end there. I found that blues note, da, 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 da. And on that sort of final, the C major 7, the G sharp might sound a bit funny there because you've got a G in that chord. So you might want to go back to pentatonic or regular minor scale for that, or just avoid the G sharp over that chord. So you've got your A harmonic minor, which you can find little phrases with, like, or that's just playing with the same sort of idea, so then adding a note, then adding another one. See how ideas can develop, but I'm thinking of that, da, 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 trying to hear a phrase and then play it. As I said a minute ago, whilst you've got these 7 notes, it's the notes of the chords you want to be able to identify. So A minor, D minor, E7. And that's just within that sort of scale box that I've given you. You'll see places you can play it all over the neck. And then sort of just trying to find those. And then it's how to sort of practice them. So if you can find them within the scale, it's also about how you move between them. So say if you're going A minor to D minor, like say between the first and the second line, when it changes to the 4 chord D minor. So get used to where the notes of the chords are within this 2-octave shape. Now, what you want to try to do is if you go A minor like this, and the next chord's D minor, you could jump to a D and then just play from there, like, that's too much of a jump. You could go to the D here, not so bad, but even better, go for the F, a semitone higher than the E, and then that's, the third of D. And I could go F, D, then A there. So you then get... So get used to sort of linking these arpeggios. Play them ascending, play them descending. Like that, get used to finding them on the fretboard. You can add chromatic approach notes to all of these arpeggios. So instead of going A, C, E, you could go G sharp, A, B, C, D sharp, E. Same to D, C sharp, D, E, F, G sharp, A. Occasionally we're bringing in a note outside of the scale, that's okay. So A minor, D minor, E7 you could do it on. Won't work quite so well. Works really well on those minor triads. So just thinking about some things you could do there. We've got the scale, which we can play musical phrases with, hopefully. but we've got the notes of the chords themselves within there, which we could add a chromatic note above, beneath maybe, which is a simple way to just jazz things up, for want of a better word. Playing over a song like this, the best thing you can do if you're getting to grips with it is try and cut out unnecessary chords to play over. So stop chasing all the chords, which I made a video about recently actually, so if that's something you want to learn how to do, then check the description and the card above for that. But what I'm meaning here is there's some unnecessary chords, and you can let's just go right. The first line, let's just think A minor. Here's a simplified way of looking at the chart. So the first line we're going to think of as just being all A minor, just to make our lives a little bit easier, and then we're going to go 2 bars of D minor to E7. And this isn't the chords of the song, this is mentally how I've sort of simplified them. And then line of A minor, at the end find the D7. Last line, A minor, E minor, A minor. I'll play over the track again. Yes, I'll be thinking of my parent scale, if you like, but I'm keeping in mind where A, C, E is for the A minor, where D, F, A is, and where E7 is, and also that D7. Now, passing note the B, chromatic, D minor, the E7, A minor, D7, back to A minor, E7, A minor, and so on. I'm playing in a very, how to describe it, thought out way there. I'm not phrasing in a normal way because I'm really thinking about what I'm trying to show you guys, but basically, you know, A minor from this could be all of that, but we were going to highlight those 3 notes wherever you find them in the scale. But then it's about like, well, I could bring in the chromatic note before, I could bring in an extra note from the scale like the B, and that would depend on the chord, what notes are nice to bring in. Like if you bring in on the D, on the B again, that's nice. On the E7, bring in the F, nice tense note. So there's a few things you can do there, but you know, it's got to be difficult getting to grips with following the chords, hearing what's happening, and being able to find things on the fretboard. And you'll never get away from needing to know the fretboard as well as you possibly can in order to do this type of thing. Essentially what you're working towards doing is adding layers to your ability to play over chords, and you know, whether that be through scales or arpeggios, it's kind of, well, starting somewhere simple and progressing on to something that's a little bit richer harmonically or rhythmically, however it might be. So some practice suggestions for this. So if you're at the point where the harmonic minor scale isn't as fluent as you would like it, let's start there. Try and play that in time over a backing track in A minor, not necessarily worrying about how the notes are fitting with the chords at any particular time, although just to, you know, observe how they sound, but don't worry what they sound like. You're just talking about scale fluency there. You can do things like playing in groupings, like so forth, like that, where I'm doing groups of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, or 3. You could practice it in thirds, so like quite nice. You get to grips with that scale over the chord progression, then maybe try and find some of the root notes, and then work towards digging out the arpeggio notes from within the scale. I mean, something good you can do is just practice trying to find like the root note of each chord as I play. If I just do the first line for a second, so just finding the root, so A, E, this is finding every chord. Again, this time I could find the third of each chord. Then I could try and find both of them, so root and third, root and third. That sort of thing. So it's not going to win the award for Best Solo of the Year award, but it's definitely just sort of starting to hear things and find them. If you have any questions or comments about today's lesson, any feedback, then please leave it below. And thank you for tuning in, and be sure to check out the other videos in this series of playing over jazz standards. I'll put it up on the screen. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing for jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday and Saturday. Anyway, until next time, see you again.